Thank you, Linda. Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. That was quite the introduction, so hopefully I live up to the standard that Linda has created. I'm going to share a lot more of my story throughout this presentation, just to give you a little bit more context to some of the principles that we're going to learn. So I just wanted to start off by saying that most masterclasses about mindset tend to be very high energy with lots of bells and whistles. And I just wanted to first start the presentation by letting you know in advance that that probably won't be your experience in this masterclass. It might be a little bit different. I want to show up authentically so that you can feel free to be authentic when we end up interacting with each other. So just before we start, just a bit of housekeeping. I'm going to cover a lot of concepts that may feel heavy for some, might be insightful for others. So in order for you to get the most out of this presentation, it's really important to not have too many distractions. I say that as I'm hearing some building works starting just as we're delivering the presentation, but hopefully it won't be too destructive. So if you have kids, make sure they're occupied. If you have pets, make sure they're out the room, make sure your phone is off. Do try to resist for the next hour to not check social media and be fully present. If you have a notepad and pen, that would be really helpful for you to take some notes. And also if as I go through the presentation, any questions kind of get triggered or come to mind, make a note of them so that, because there'll be an opportunity at the end of the presentation to answer questions. So I want this to be an interactive presentation. I am a coach, so I'm used to interacting. And there are going to be moments where I'm going to be tired of hearing my own voice. So I might ask you a question just to make sure that you're still with me and ask you to give me your thoughts or your feedback via the chat, just so that I can get a sense of where you are. So if you could interact with me, that would be mucho appreciated. Okay, so my promise to you is that you will leave here learning something new about yourself. So you'll have clarity about whatever area that you're challenged with. And if you've come to this experience with something that you're specifically dealing with, you'll definitely get new insights into yourself, and it will provide you potentially with the opportunity to transform that area of your life. But I want you to be specific about your intention. So what's your promise? Not your promise to me, but your promise to yourself. Our intentions are very, very important in influencing the outcomes that we create in our lives. A lot of us kind of just go through the motions. We wake up, we go to work, we come back, we eat, we sleep, and there's not really an intention behind what we're creating and how we're showing up in life. So for the purpose of this presentation, I want you to share with me what your intention is. By the end of it, what you want to achieve as an outcome. So this isn't the moment where I ask you to put in the chat, just so that I can see where everyone is in terms of what they want to get. So we've got building a positive mindset, getting clarity and peace, that I am where I need to be, reconnecting with my personal power, unlocking some of the fears. Brilliant, brilliant intentions. Okay, great. Body, my abundance, Caitlin, I like that. All right, so if you have signed up for this training, you've probably been wondering why you constantly maybe feel like a fraud or imposter no matter how much you achieve, or maybe you're operating at the edge of burnout. So Kashmir, you said that you want to have peace about where you are. Are you constantly in a state of stress or overwhelm? Do you find that you are repeating the same patterns over and over again and getting the same results, whether it's in your career, your finances, or your relationships? Or maybe you have a burning desire to fulfill your potential. So you know that you're doing okay. You might be doing excellent compared to your community and your environment, but deep down, you know that you're not scratching the surface of what you're capable of. Or maybe you are just exhausted about the same old, and you want to just break through patterns. Okay, Kashmir, you know there's more. Okay, brilliant. Great. Well, imagine if you were able to be fearless and take powerful actions in every single situation that presented itself to you. And imagine if you were peaceful and calm in the midst of conflict and disagreement. And what if you were able to express yourself powerfully and authentically in every single interaction? So most people spend most of their time thinking that they're in control of their lives, trying hard to make their dreams work, but unsure about what's holding them back from reaching their full potential. What most people don't know is that they have a hidden belief and a pattern that's running absolutely every single thing they're doing and limiting them in every single area of their lives. As a result, most people are frustrated with their lives, have anxiety because they're trying to control outcomes and failing to create the results that they desire. Or maybe they're experiencing confusion because what they want and believe to be true doesn't seem to tie up with the thoughts and experiences that they're creating in their reality. So the purpose of this masterclass is to explore some of the ways that you're subconsciously limiting yourself, provide you with some insights into some of the ways your patterns are showing up in your interactions and life experiences. And I'll also run through the 4-step process to reprogramming your mind for success. I'll also give you an opportunity to work with me for those of you who want to go deeper with this work and start the process of breaking your patterns. Okay, so you might have been wondering who is this woman before Linda gave her amazing introduction of me, but you might still be curious. So I'm going to give you a little bit of insight about who I am and what I do. So as Linda shared, over the last 10 years, I'm very well studied in personal and spiritual growth. I've read widely and trained in this area. And as a result, I've worked with CEOs, executives, business owners, athletes, creative consultants across a number of industries all around the world. I've even helped mothers transform their relationship with their children. I've helped startup founders raise money for their businesses, and I've helped individuals heal their personal and professional relationships. So my background, I was born into a wealthy family in Nigeria and moved to London when I was 6. And when we moved to London, we went from one major extreme of complete abundance. We had maids and drivers and family living at home in a huge community to my mum being by herself, the mother of 3 children whilst pregnant with my baby sister and being in complete poverty. So things were pretty bad. We would go months without any gas or electricity and days upon days without food. One of the things that I was really grateful to my mum for was introducing me to meditation at the age of 11. So spirituality was the center of our lives. We would meditate before we left the house. We would meditate when we came home. We would meditate before we ate. We would meditate. Everything was an excuse for meditation. And we'd also have quiet days every Sunday where we weren't allowed to talk until 12 o'clock, and we would break the silence with a meditation and continue with our day. So it really taught us to be self-reflective and go inwards for our answers. Despite my upbringing and that spiritual foundation, I hit a crossroads when I was in my mid-20s. A whole bunch of things happened at the same time. So I was given an ultimatum at the job that I was working. I was a partner of a startup recruitment business, and I was told to keep my opinions to myself or leave, which didn't feel like a choice at the time. So I left, and I made a promise to myself that I would never work for anyone again. And then I was also engaged to be married, and I cancelled my wedding 4 months before the day. And I also moved in with my mum, who at the time I was blaming for all the issues I had because I had been helping her take care of the family and raise my siblings since the age of 8. So all of these situations at the same time led me to a rock bottom, which culminated in 2 failed suicide attempts. So at that rock bottom, I was in complete agony. I knew I wanted to stop hurting, but I had no clue what to do. After my second failed suicide attempt, I was introduced to a coach. At first, I resisted his questioning, but he never gave up on me. And we actually worked together for 3 to 5 hours a day for 3 whole months, every single day for 3 whole months. And you'll understand why I was so intense about this process as we go through the presentation. So how did I go from being homeless, depressed, and suicidal to traveling the world, healing all of my broken relationships in my life, and growing a multi-million-pound company? Well, my reality changed because my relationship to myself changed. What I quickly learned after a few coaching sessions was that there were 2 distinct parts of my personality. My higher self was a part of me that connected to my spiritual practices. I felt like I had unlimited power and potential. I manifested anything I put my mind to. I feared nothing and no one. And then there was my mind self, and that was fearful of the future. I felt insecure. I wanted to be in control of everything and everyone. And to be honest, I was just simply miserable. So I learned that through the coaching that the mind has a mind of its own, and its job was to protect me. And that protection became unsustainable, and I needed to release its hold on me. The truth is that although it happened quickly through the intense coaching, it was at the beginning the hardest thing I had to do in my life, because I was pretty much releasing everything I thought I was, which is not easy. Imagine if your mind is designed to protect you. It literally thought that I was risking my life because I was letting go of all of my beliefs. And I also realized that some of the practices I was learning, I had to continue for the rest of my life. So, are you curious and ready to know how to make your mind your ally? Again, let me just see that you're still awake. Let me know in the chat. Yes. Okay. Caitlin, thank you. Let's get into it then. Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Great. Still here. Let's go. Okay, I'm loving this. There's a lot of energy in the chat. Thank you. All right. So, first things first, we've all experienced two parts of ourselves at different parts of our lives. So let me know in the chat if you've experienced moments where you have been in your full power, you felt invincible, you felt like anything that you think of, you can make happen. And you have moments where everything you touch turns to gold and you're confident about making all of your dreams a reality. Does that sound familiar? Have any of you experienced that? Yes, often? Perfect. Amazing, amazing, great. All right, so let me know in the chat whether there are moments where that completely gets wiped away and then you get triggered out of that feeling and you end up feeling like an imposter, or you do something to sabotage yourself, or you experience feeling stuck. Does that sound familiar? Yes, yeah. Yes to both, yeah, great. So we're all on the same page so far, perfect. All right, so the part of you that is experiencing being in your full power is your highest self. In this state, there's no mind. You are fully present and you're able to be the full expression of yourself. And that is able to flow through with every day when I start work amazingly. So the full expression of yourself shines through with absolute ease. Most humans are rarely operating from this higher selves because they're mainly in survival. So it's fantastic. Well, I wasn't surprised because you guys are high achievers. So I'm sure that all of you have experienced that. So for most humans, our consciousness, which is our higher self, is wrapped around our mind. So we experience the thoughts from the mind as true, which affects the way that we feel and the way that we show up and act in the world. So creating the space between your consciousness and your mind is like peeling Velcro, because take whatever age you are, that's how long you've had to really plaster your identity around your mind's pattern and beliefs. So to truly operate from that place of power that you've all experienced, it takes three things to be happening consecutively at the same time. One of them is having awareness. Before this, most of you have probably related to yourself as a personality you've built instead of the two separate parts, and knowing distinctly when you're operating from one and when you're operating from the other. So the first thing to do is build awareness of when you are operating from your defense mechanisms, which is your mind, and when you're operating from your present self, which is your power. I'm sure many of you have had situations where you felt like you were taking new actions to transform something in an area of your life, whether it's relationships or finances or career or whatever, and you realize that you end up in the same place with the same results, regardless of the new effort that you're putting in or the new actions. And that's because you might think that you're taking new actions, but if you're coming from your protection mechanism, you're still kind of doing the same thing, looking for the same evidence, taking similar actions and producing similar results, which is why awareness is really key. The second thing that needs to be present is presence. So being able to get yourself and direct your attention and your consciousness into the present moment allows you to become an observer of your thoughts rather than be in your thoughts and taking actions from there. And then the key third thing that needs to be present is taking consistent, aligned actions to your purpose or to the higher self that you relate to yourself as. The more you're able to act from that place, the more you interrupt your defense mechanisms and reprogram your neurology to create sustainable, consistent, new results in your life. So now we've established that you are not fully running the show because your consciousness is wrapped around your mind's identity. Let's look at the mind's identity. So you have two active parts of your mind. 5% of you is actually the conscious mind, and it's the part of you that declares what you want. I want more money. I want to attract the man or woman of my dreams. I want to like progress in my career and really explode my business. That's the 5%. That's 5% of you that's conscious. So sometimes you might get what you want and sometimes you don't, but whatever the outcome, it never seems to be quite enough. Who can relate to that? Again, just checking in that you're still with me. Yeah, me, yeah. Great. Now, the other part of the mind is the 95%, and that part of you is subconscious. So, and actually 70 to 80% of that compromises of limiting beliefs, which means that your life experience is generally more negative than it's not. So I have a lot of clients who are in the personal growth space, and I know Caitlin is a healer, and there are other coaches that I've worked with, and they're like, Linda, I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what my limitations are. I'm positive in life. And then we start really doing the work and they bring the awareness up and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm like looking for negativity everywhere. And it's not your fault. It's just your mind trying to protect you. And if it anticipates danger, it can anticipate the reactions that you need to do the defense mechanism to keep yourself safe. Okay, so that subconscious mind starts populating with information the moment you're born. So if we take your life as a movie, the moment that you are born, your life, the movie play gets hit, and then the movie starts unfolding. You meet your parents, you start to experience smells and tastes and see different things, and you get acclimatized to your environment, and all of that is data being stored into your mind. But then there is a moment where you experience a trauma, and it could be, mom said I could have ice cream for breakfast and I didn't get ice cream, or it could be something a lot more significant. But whatever it is, you get confused because you think, okay, well, that doesn't feel like love to me, and that's not the way that I feel that I should be loved. And you make a decision in that moment that you are not enough. And that's the way that so again, as soon as you make that decision and you hit that trauma, it's like the movie of your life stops and it malfunctions. And now you're kind of replaying that scene over and over again. So even though life continues to unfold, your body ages as time goes, your mind stays stuck in this loop, looking for evidence that you are not enough. So even I meet people who tell me that I look like I've got it all together. I've been doing this work for a very long time, and even till now, there are things that I have to be mindful of and ways that I catch myself operating from not enoughness. So it can be really easy to judge people who are confident as kind of got it figured out and they don't have any issues. But I haven't met anyone yet, unless they're an enlightened being. I haven't met any enlightened beings, but every single person has some version of this. So let's look at how you've formed your personality. You hit your first traumatic experience. You made a decision that from your trauma that you're not enough. Your mind created a defense mechanism, and that defense mechanism becomes the pattern that you're running because you're on this loop, and that starts to form the personality that you have. So a lot of your pattern will be learned from the person or the people that you felt caused you pain. So the way that you can start identifying the defense mechanism that you're running is to pay attention to the common judgments you make towards others. Now, I'm going to give you a quite complicated concept. So I want you to, I'm going to go really slow because I have a tendency to talk fast, and I want you to, like, I'm going to ask you at the end if you've understood it. So when you are young, you are very suggestible and your mind is consuming all of this information. So as soon as you hit your traumatic experience, usually it's from a significant person in your life, whether it's a teacher, your mom, your dad, your older brother, or someone in your life, auntie, uncle, someone. In the moment that you experience the trauma, you feel powerless and they are the person in power. So your brain thinks, okay, I'm feeling powerless right now. You will have a judgment to them about them, whether they're mean, cold, disconnected, and you will log that this is how to act and behave when I'm in power. So a lot of things that really shock my clients when I start bringing awareness to their patterns is how much they are like the person that caused them their trauma. So when you go through life and you judge people, what you're usually doing is rejecting the characteristic trait that you experience when you experience your root, but it creates a blind spot because you think it's out there with them and you don't see how you are demonstrating those same behaviors. So a way to start to see what your defense mechanisms are is to pay attention to the judgments you have about others and turn that inwards to say, actually, where am I demonstrating these same judgments in my life? So let me know if that makes sense to you. Okay, Daniela, yeah. Certainly does. Perfect. Great. So an example of this is if I experienced my mother as cold and disconnected, which made me feel unvalued, whenever I'm triggered, I'm anticipating danger. So I too become cold and disconnected. And this is why judgment acts as a tool for transformation, because we're not really too present to how we act when we're triggered, because it happens in such a automatic, it's an instant moment and then it's an automatic reaction. But when we're like, oh, okay, I have a problem when people are out of integrity. So where do I show up out of integrity? And do I feel that the person that caused me trauma or the person that I have the biggest gripe with from my childhood also was out of integrity? It will give you a huge clue about what your pattern is. So 95% of your subconscious mind that makes up who you are shows up in 4 distinct ways. You are now, so we said that your movie scene is malfunctioned and it's just on repeat. And it identifies itself in 3 ways. It's looking for evidence that you're not enough. So someone could raise their eyebrows or scratch their eyes and you're like, yep, he doesn't value me. Or he doesn't respect me, or whatever the case may be. But in reality, all he did was scratch his eyes. So we're constantly looking for evidence and we're constantly finding it. The other part of it is that we manufacture evidence when we don't find it. So we create the situation to be true that we're not enough. And when we receive the opposite evidence that we are enough, we push it away or sabotage it. And we manipulate love. So we show up in ways to try and make people love us. So I'll go into more detail about this. So in terms of looking for evidence, how someone might look for evidence is if, for example, someone took long to respond to a text, or you felt they said your name in a tone that you didn't like. The first place you're likely to go is that they don't think that you're important enough to respond to you quickly, or they don't respect you, how busy you are. And if you are operating from a place of being enough, you might be a little bit more understanding. You might think, actually, they're probably busy, which is why they haven't responded to my text, or they probably having a bad day, which is why they've responded in a tone. So this is how completely different our experience of life can be, depending on whether we're coming from our identity, which is our mind, or being in that powerful present self. The part of your mind that looks for evidence is called the reticular activating system. It's a part of the brain that controls the information you filter in from the world. We literally are capable of taking in all of the data that's coming in from the world because it's too much. So that part of our brain kind of tunes into what's important to us and then filters out information. So I'm sure you guys have had experiences where you say, I'm going to buy a white Mini Cooper, and then you go out onto the street and everyone's driving white Mini Coopers. It's not that they realize that you were going to buy it and they wanted to get there first and rub it in your face. What's happening is that the reticular activating system is saying, okay, well, this is what's important to her, so let's show her evidence of it. So you can now see how manifestation works in terms of, if you believe that you're going to be successful, your reticular activating system will filter out opportunities for you that will lead you to what you want to create in life. So that's how you look for evidence. The second way is that you manufacture evidence. So we are so powerful that when we don't find evidence that we're good enough, we create evidence to give us the outcome that believes that we're not enough. So an example of this, I had a recent client, I spoke to him this week actually, and his root belief. So I have a process of helping people figure out the exact root belief they have, but it's not so important. You just need to know it's some version of not enoughness. But his specific root belief, oh, Caitlin, I think you know your root belief, right? What's your root belief? So his root belief is, I'm not supported. And the way that it was manifested in his business was that he was frustrated that his team never quite show up in support of him. So he always has to take on way more than he's supposed to be taking on as a CEO. As we started coaching, yours is I'm not acknowledged. Yeah, so as we started coaching, we realized that he wasn't actually letting them know what support looks like to him. So of course they couldn't show up in the way that he needed support, and then he got to be right that he wasn't supported. Once he became aware of how he was setting them up to be right that he wasn't supported, he was able to put things in place to be clear about what he needed from them, and guess what? They were able to show up for him and support him. The third way it manifests is that we push away any evidence that we are enough. So it could be someone giving you a compliment and you rejecting it, or someone breaking up a relationship where you're in a relationship where you're being treated well, and you tell yourself, oh, I'm really bored, or I'm just not excited, or it's stale, or whatever. You'll find a way to sabotage something that is actually proving how much you are enough. And finally, the way that we manipulate love is to try to exert ourselves in a way that will make people love us. So this is one of the key lessons that I learned when I started receiving coaching. Because of the role I played in my family, my root belief is I'm not valued. So how it showed up was that I was exerting myself in my family. I was controlling everyone and everything. I was making money, taking care of my siblings, just doing the most. And that's what led me to my depression, because I had nothing to give. And when I was coaching, and my coach kept asking me, who said you had to do this? I was arguing with him, like, what do you mean who said I have to do it? If I don't do it, who else is going to do it? And what I realized was really going on is that I didn't know how to feel significant without the role I played. So even though I thought it was a selfish act, it was actually a selfish act in a way for me to manipulate, like, if they need me, then they're going to have to love me, rather than just being as I am without doing anything, knowing that I'm loved. So this is the way, this is the fourth way that it manifests. And for an example of that is someone who felt like they weren't seen and heard might end up becoming someone that always feels that they have to be funny or the life of the party, and everyone knows them for it. So they have to live up to that expectation, regardless of whether that's how they feel in that moment or not, because they're trying to make sure that people are happy around them or love them. So it's an inauthentic way of trying to manipulate love from the world. Yes. Okay, so is everyone with me? Does all of that make sense? Are you starting to see yourself in some of those 4 ways that I covered? Yeah, it's a capital yes, Shirley, for sure, for sure. Great. All right, so it becomes a vicious circle Every time you find evidence and run your pattern to anchor your identity, you create a tighter wall of fear, which is false evidence appearing real. So now you're not actually able to flow with the natural unfolding of life. You're experiencing it through the lens of your past, which means that you're living in an illusion. That's why no one sees life through the same lens. You can have 10 people in a room, show them the same scene of a movie, and you'll have 10 different interpretations because they're seeing it through this malfunction scene that they're running all the time. So hopefully now you can understand why you might not be reaching your full potential. The majority of your personality is playing out in these 4 distinct areas, and 5% of you is the one that's trying to move forward and make that change and make your dreams a reality and create that peace in your life. So when you think you're taking new actions, it mostly ends up being a different version of the same thing as a result. So some examples of how this vicious cycle might play out is that I know someone in my life who travels a lot and always moves, but complains about not having a base. And she desperately wants a base, but every time she stays in a location for a little bit, something will happen and she'll say, no, but it's different this time. Like this happened and you don't understand, I have to leave for these reasons, and she'll leave again. And it's still within the midst of her pattern, but she thinks that it's a valid reason. So the same applies for someone who wants to cultivate deep relationships, but has the tendency to cut people off. They attract unavailable people and they're attracted to unavailable people. And when they meet someone, they're always thinking it feels different, and they ignore the red flags and they try to make it work, and they push and push and push because they're addicted to that dynamic of being with someone that's so unavailable. But they think it's different that time until it's not. So these are the ways that it manifests and just goes round and round in circles. So what if you could reprogram your mind, unleash your untapped potential, and live free of your limitations? It is actually possible. Let's explore how. So I've come up with 4 steps to unlock your subconscious patterns and reprogram your mind. Those 4 steps are building awareness, taking accountability, making amends, and taking transformed actions. As I've said, 95% of who you are is run by your subconscious mind, which is not conscious to you. So you cannot reprogram anything without fully unlocking the data that it's in that 95%. That work is done by using tools to bring awareness to different reactions, behaviors, interactions for different situations. So for me, working with my coach 3 to 5 hours a day, every day for 3 months after my last suicide attempt, made it clear exactly why I had been producing the results that I had been producing and feeling the way that I felt, which led to the breakdown. I was exhausted and I was sick, but I felt empowered because I was no longer the victim anymore. Before working with him, I was blaming my family, I was blaming my mom. And then after working with him, I was like, oh, I'm creating all of this, which means that I can change it. So awareness is a very fundamental part of stepping into your higher self. The other part is accountability. So the part of us that manipulates others to receive love, we felt we missed out on as in our primitive years, our early years, really cares about how the world views us. So we work overtime to show up in a particular way. So admitting the truth about what we're subconsciously up to in life, it's not pretty and it's not comfortable. An example of this is that after I built my first company to multiple millions, I walked away from it in 2016, and a year later I went completely broke. And I asked myself, why do I keep making lots of money and losing it, and making lots of money and losing it? And what I realized is that the role that I played in my family of taking care of everyone, it kind of made me feel burdened to them. So when I had money, I pretty much gave it all away because they were coming to me with, Linda, I need help with this, I need help with that. I was helping my friend with my godchildren. I was just giving everything and giving all of me. So subconsciously, to get a break, I had to make myself broke in order for me to feel free of no one asking me, because if they knew that I was broke, they knew that I couldn't help. Again, we don't do these things consciously, but we're doing it subconsciously based on our patterns. So in order to break my pattern, I had to have a conversation with my sisters at the time. My mum had died and I'd become guardian to my little brothers, and we were working together to raise them. And I said to them that I realized that I make myself broke so that you guys don't ask me for help. So I'm just going to start saying no, which might feel uncomfortable, but this is what I need to do to create a sustainable wealth for myself. And they were like, oh my gosh, like that's a strange thing to admit to. But unless we're taking full ownership of what we're up to and enrolling the people around us to hold us to account to it, it's likely that we're going to keep running the same patterns. So making amends. Once we take ownership of what we're up to, it's time for our adult selves to give our inner child the love that we need instead of trying to manipulate it from the world. So that part of you that feels in your power is the part of you that is fully present. It's your adult self. There's no past, there's no future, no fear of the future. So in those moments where you feel triggered, the power comes from asking yourself what you need to give yourself in that moment in order for you to feel like you are acknowledging yourself or you are coming from a place of being enough. And every time you take actions in alignment to that, you heal that hurt little child and you give them new evidence that they're loved, which then has you become more whole as a person, which has you not needing to operate in those 4 mechanisms that your identity plays out. Is everyone with me? Take a breath. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you, Natty. So the 4th most important part, this is the most powerful part of the 4-step process, is where you start reprogramming the patterns you've created. When we're clear that we're operating from our identity, it's important to take new actions in alignment to our higher selves or our purpose. And that way we restore wholeness where it has been broken. So this can be a different type of conversation than you're used to having. It could be you taking a physical action that would be outside the norm of what you usually do. So these actions disrupt your brain. They're not comfortable because your mind, your reactions, your emotions are resisting the action, and it takes you kind of being courageous and taking the action anyway in alignment to operating from a whole place. And when you do, it sends a message to your brain that you didn't die, and your brain is like, oh, okay, we didn't die. Maybe we can trust her or him and release this pattern that we've created. And the more you do that, the more you start to release the pattern, the more you start to generally feel a state of calm and presence and peace and able to operate. And you also experience a lot more creativity because your brain isn't always in fear mode. You're able to kind of, just be present and create from your strengths and your power. Okay, how is everyone feeling? What's coming up for you? What are your thoughts so far on what I've covered? Was it a lot to process? Are things making sense? Where are you? Like there's a lot of work to be done. So powerful, so much is resonating. A lot is resonating. Great. Perfect. All right, great. I had some testimonials, but we've only got 10 minutes left. So I'll just quickly run through this and then we can take some questions and wrap up. So Mariana is a client of mine that started working with me at the beginning of COVID. She was 3 years into her startup. She's like an ex-corporate executive. She had worked for Facebook and manufacturing corporations. And in year 3, she was struggling to raise money and she had only raised 10,000 and she had loads of complaints. And I tend to just amuse my clients and listen to their complaints, and then we get to the nitty-gritty and do the work. And within just a month, we increased her confidence. She was able to raise $100,000 in the midst of COVID, despite her beliefs that no one would invest in companies. And she was also able to have difficult business conversations that she was fearful would have a fallout, but there was no fallout because she was coming from a different place. And Wayne, he's an award-winning film director and producer and photographer. And even though he had won awards for his productions, he didn't feel that he had had any notable achievements in the 10 years before working together. And most importantly, he was living with his mum at the time, again, through the pandemic. And he had a fractured relationship with her, which was kind of eating him up, and he didn't know how to shift past it. within a month, he had taken all of the photography that he covered through the Black Lives Matter process, and he put it into a coffee table book. And within, I think it was 2 weeks, he had major publishers like Penguin and other publishers actually bid in and to negotiate and offer him a book deal. But most importantly, he healed his relationship with his mom, and he even made a documentary of her life in the time that we were working together. So the common feeling that most people have after experiencing my training or coaching is that, okay, they've got everything they need to go and start reprogramming their belief. I saw that one of you said that it seems like there's a lot of work to do. It's not necessarily a lot of work. I've made the way that I've designed things is to make it very easy and efficient, but it is intense. I'm sure Caitlin can attest to that because she's experienced some of my work in terms of the intensity. But after you leave this training, you're probably not going to retain a lot of the information, and it's going to be that 5% of you that wants to make change that will probably take some action and make change, but it's whether that change is going to be sustainable.